Good morning, Excellence family. Today is Title Tuesday, and I had the opportunity to catch up with Paul Sarone, our title attorney in-house for Excellence Title, and the entire family of Excellence. Hey, Paul, good morning. How are you?
Hey, good morning. Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday.
Yeah.
How's your week been so far?
So far, so good. Happy to be here and talk about some different topics that are coming up with the agents.
Well, we really appreciate your support and guidance behind the scenes. We see all kinds of things come up, and we always encourage our agents to reach out. As agent support, I'm here to help you, and we do research with Paul and get back to you on, what steps to take if you're in a bind or just have questions before you're going to list a property. We're here to help out. Today's topic is generally around when you have land, most of the time, multiple lots that your client might be purchasing or your seller in a transaction. And the question is, when there's different folio numbers, is that one closing or are there multiple searches involved? How does that impact the cost? How do we handle those type of things? I'll leave that
Yeah,
to
so
Paul.
yeah, so with those land deals, a lot of times people are buying different parcels, putting them together. The idea is usually to develop those or build something and combination of the different lots. Um, we do treat it for purposes of a closing statement and a deed as one transaction. But one thing to keep in mind when doing this is maybe there's five lots that somebody's buying and trying to combine them. But for now, they're not combined. There's five folios, there's five legal descriptions, which means for us, in order to do our job and make sure that the buyer is obtaining clear title, we have to run five title searches, five lien searches, because even though the same person is buying it, for legal purposes, it doesn't matter. We have to review each one as a separate transaction. So in that case, it is important not only to do that and review any liens on the property, any mortgages, any judgments, anything that could come up that was, from the seller, but we also, depending on what the clients are planning to do with the property, it's a little more involved in that we review the title exceptions. So we talked about this in other title talks, but when looking at title, and the commitment, there's two things. There's requirements, which are the things that we're required to clear in order to give the buyer a title policy, and there's exceptions. Those are things that run with the land, things like easements or government restrictions. So it's important when you're dealing with commercial transactions, especially, where there's a plan to do something on the property, that we also review the restrictions, because those exceptions are going to be part of the property. So an example would be maybe there's an ordinance or there was an agreement between a prior seller 30 years ago and the county where the land, if it ever were to be developed, it can only be used as low-income housing, or it can only be used as commercial, or it can, there's restrictions that get put on these properties. And I have had cases where people call me and they buy a lot and then they start doing construction, and then they want to sue everybody because they say, hey, we bought this to build condos, and then when we went, they denied it because it's not allowed. And I'll say, well, do you have a title policy? I'll look at their title policy, and in the exception it says there it's not allowable for residential. So those are things that you need an attorney, or somebody experienced in commercial that's going to make sure that it's suitable for the purpose that your client or you want when you're buying the property. So that's important to do during the due diligence phase. So in commercial transactions or land deals, it's not a great idea to just do a very short inspection period like you do maybe on a house, where you're just waiting, to make sure the roof's good, the plumbing, the electrical. In this case, there needs to be a legal review. So depending on the lot, 20 to 30 days is typical, especially if if they're buying cash. The way that normally the things are structured is, for example, a 30-day due diligence period. And then after that, the deposit would go hard, and closing would be, a week or two after that. So those are important things to keep in mind. It's not as simple as just finding the land and buying it. It's making sure that there's nothing on there that's going to prevent you from doing what you want to do.
even possibly resell it later, because if you can't develop it or do anything with it, then no one wants that for that reason.
Yeah.
You bring that up, and we've seen a few land deals in the last week, and everyone wants to waive the inspection, but something to keep in mind, you do need to do your diligence as a buyer. It's an investment. Many won't end up holding it or even developing it for too long. But the intention for resale purposes later, that is key. I mean, you mentioned something key there. We've seen a lot
Yeah.
of cash land deals where people want to close quick. It's cash, that's it, waive the inspection.
Right.
Maybe you want to take a second look at that.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, this is getting a little more into, details of things that happen, but there's also, they waive inspections on land deals, and I have seen this too, where depending on what you're going to do. Obviously, if you're just buying a lot and you're going to hold it and it's an investment, um, it's one thing. But if you're planning to develop, like I had a client, we just had a deal that was under contract, and it canceled because you have to do the soil tests. So if you're planning to build, a building on a piece of land and you don't do a soil test, you could be in for a surprise. And this client had no idea. I asked them, did you do a phase 1 environmental? And they're like, no, we don't need to do that because there's buildings all around. And I go, well, that area I know for a fact that it's a part here in Homestead where there's runoff. And I'm like, there's issues sometimes with those. I think you should. They did it. And sure enough, the soil, they could build there, but the soil, the condition of the soil would have been much more expensive, the construction, because they have to reinforce and it's more concrete pour. There's more materials involved. They have to, it's not great soil. So once they factored that in, they were figuring, okay, we're going to build for X amount of dollars. This is going to be worth this. And then all of a sudden it wasn't, so they ended up canceling. Those are the kind of things, obviously, that deal cancels, we don't close it, but I'd rather do that than them close and then find out later that their construction costs are more than double what they anticipated. There's things like that. There's restrictions. Sometimes there's environmental restrictions. There could be, you're buying land and there's just a bunch of, it's dirt and trees or whatever. You don't know if there's a restriction, maybe from DERM or for some government or some environmental agency, that certain trees on the lot cannot be cut down. And then maybe there's some like right in the middle where you want to build. You got to either work around that or not buy that lot. So there's a lot to consider. It's not as simple as just finding it, and that's something that unfortunately a lot of people learn the hard way. But like seasoned developers and builders will tell you that the initial due diligence on the land is the key, because that helps you with a lot of surprises that could pop up later if not.
No, we can help our agents with that due diligence, correct? So if they have a client buying land, is there additional costs involved in that? I know like an environmental survey if they want to build.
Yeah, environment. I mean, it's the environmental range in cost depending on the size and the area where it is. But yeah, it's a few $1,000s, anywhere you slice it between, all the due diligence that you have to do. So if you're, and then it gets expensive too if you're buying 10 lots, and it's not us charging more. It's just the cost of the search. It's the same thing as buying 10 properties. There's 10 title searches that need to be done. So our title search cost is 10 times more than it would be on a single folio deal. So, buyer or seller, whoever contractually agreed to pay the searches, would have to pay that and lien search. And then also you're going to want to do a survey. If the seller, especially the seller, is not giving you a copy of the survey, there's a buyer, you definitely want to do a survey. You don't want to do it after you've closed and you can start building. You want to do it because you want to see mapped out any easements or anything on the property, because there could be easements running throughout the property that are going to affect your building or your plans. You don't want to. You're going to need if you're going to build, you're going to need a survey anyways for the architects and for the plans and everything. So it's better to just, it's more costs up front, but sometimes it's sunk costs because you don't end up closing and you have to pay for these things. But that's the way it works. You don't want to later cost yourself a lot more money to try to save a few bucks before the closing, not doing due diligence.
I think that's key, and just
Yeah.
getting everything cleared up front so the buyer knows what they're getting into. And also
Yeah.
for resale purposes, if they end up not building on it, they've done that diligence, it can only drive the value up, saying, I've done my homework, this land is ready to go, or
Right.
not. And you
Right.
can disclose properly that the land
Yeah.
has certain issues.
And
I
also,
think,
it sounds kind of like something that shouldn't need to be said, but also, going out to the land. Sometimes these deals, they pop up and nobody actually goes walking and seeing the area. Like I had a client actually last week that I met with for something else, and they asked me if they can help them. They bought a tax deed auction. They bought a lot, and they thought they were getting a good deal. Well, their lot is landlocked. There's no access unless you go through somebody else's land. So they have no access to any street. They'd have to, and that's going to cost them now, God knows how much, because we have to negotiate with other owners to get an easement, basically to access their land to go to this. It's
oh my
industrial
gosh.
land. It's not for houses, for industrial. But their idea was, oh, we're going to buy this and we're going to develop it and do warehouses, or and they can't because there's no way to get in or out. And they were like, I wish I had gone there and looked, but before, but they bought it in an auction. So things like that. It seems kind of ridiculous, but if you're buying land, even a lot of times people are not from the place; they just want to buy land somewhere and eventually build it. You want to see what's going on around there. If there's roads being built, if there's you don't want to be the first guy to build a house in an area where there's nothing. I mean, you can, but it's more
Costly.
challenging when there's no infrastructure. Is there sewer connection? Has the government done any kind of work for neighboring lots that's going to help you and make it a lot easier? Those are all things, it's not a simple process. You need to work with experienced architects, experienced attorneys, experienced engineers. If you're going to build something, you can't just get into it. And, people get blinded by the numbers, but there's a lot that goes into it. There's a reason why builders, make a lot of money when they sell it, because they take a lot of risk. So something to keep in mind for your clients. And then, as always, if you're working with somebody, even if they are seasoned, and then and they need attorney opinion letters or anything like that, we do that as well.
Well, that's amazing. I really appreciate the insight on that. It's not just a simple land deal, then there's more to it.
No. Yeah.
I would always highly encourage you to reach out to us. Paul is a vast array of knowledge in many areas. He's here to help us experience the Xcellence way. Give us a call, run a scenario by us. We're here to assist. We can help your client close throughout the state of Florida, from the tip of the Keys all the way to the Panhandle. We're here to assist you. As agent concierge, I'm always here to help. And I encourage you to please reach out. If you have questions, run it by us. Paul, I can't thank you enough for your support.
No,
And
thank you. That's what we're here for.
I really, really appreciate your help and support for all of our agents. And we want to wish you all a wonderful week. If you are wanting to reach out to us, you can dial 305-595-7355, and it's going to be the option for Xcellence Title. Or you can just reach out to us at hello@xcellencetitle.com. I really appreciate all of you. Thank you so much, Paul, for your time this morning. And I wish you all a great week. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Bye.